detection collaborative, a detection dog training trio with Stacy Barnett.
Hi.
Robin Greubel.
Hey there.
And Crystal Wing.
What's up?
With humor and a big dose of theory, our trio talks practical training advice and features interviews with top trainers and scientists.
It's Canine Detection Collaborative.
When you're thinking about like the Digidogs and the low odor profiles, and I know I was just, researching everything, you'd started working with sexual crime dogs. How did that come about, and how are you using dogs in that sort of a situation?
Well, that's very different. I don't know exactly how this popped up. I think it was one of the instructors who thought, couldn't we be doing something in that field? And so I started to look online. Where are they doing what, and what does it look like? We ended up in Norway, where they were having a couple of dogs that were completely outside of the normal canine department, and they were much more linked to a laboratory that was doing the further research on the DNA analysis and stuff like that. And we saw what they were doing, so we certainly saw that it was feasible. There were certain things that we didn't like. We didn't like the indication, for example. We thought it was a bit messy. We wanted something nicer, calmer. And there were some other things that we were not happy with. For example, when they were checking to see if there were semen stains on clothing or on textiles, they would be putting it down flat on the floor and the dog would be walking all over it. We didn't much like that either. But we said, okay, but this is feasible. It seems doable. So let's see if we can get dogs trained on that. And that was quite a journey. It was fun to be doing. What we did is basically we back-chained from semen, from the indication, teaching the indication, semen odor, to the searching, and then, everything. And we linked, we did right from the start, is that we started cooperating with a department in the Amsterdam University, at Amsterdam Medical Center, where they had a department that was trying to develop new technologies, mainly using light, I think, to detect biological stains. Okay. And they had students that were willing to work with us. And we had students from other forensic departments as well. So what we did right from the start is we started training the dogs and getting them to indicate. We incorporated the forensic people from the police and from the laboratories that would be doing the final work. And we said, we're not going to have dogs prove to you that this is semen. What we're going to train dogs to do is tell you where you can take a sample to help you do the forensic analysis.
So it's not specific to the individual, like not a match to sample. It's more, this is the type of biological substance that you're looking for.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's just saying, so it's more generalized to this is semen, right? And
exactly.
less to this is this potential suspect.
No.
Right. Okay. Got it.
It's just semen. And that also immediately brought, that also created we immediately quite quickly discovered that if you just used semen from the instructors and handlers that were working with these dogs, they became very narrow-minded. They just found this, because semen differs between people. So there too, you need to generalize. So we were sort of stuck. There was a cooperation with the fertility clinic in Amsterdam.
I was going to say, I'm thinking about source material. And I'm like, boy.
But that fertility clinic didn't really come through. They would want to have to ask someone to come in and offer their semen for this particular purpose. And that really didn't work. The people there didn't like doing it, and we had big troubles getting it. So I called around a couple of hospitals around here, and I found one where the head of the laboratory was also a microbiologist. He was interested, he understood, And he said, yes, I think we can do this. So we have a very good cooperation with these people. They have a fertility clinic. People come in there either for fertility investigations, or they come for a vasectomy, for example, and they need to, have a checkup to see that it really worked, the vasectomy. So, and they are given a piece of paper. We don't advertise for it or anything, but the people who collect the samples, when they get the samples, they inform the people, is it okay? We only need a drop of your semen for the analysis. Would you be willing to donate the remainder of your sample to these sexual crime dogs? And it will only be used for training, for certification, and for validation of their work. You don't need to be afraid that you will hijack your DNA profile. We never do any DNA work with it.
Right.
We don't do anything like that. We only use it for training and for certification and for validation. So we do indicative tests with it. We try to establish, is there DNA available, but we don't don't do any qualification of the DNA.
So this has my brain's going again. And did you see a difference between, let's say, like with or without a vasectomy, though? No. Okay.
Find it both. No problem. No problem.
Okay.
But of course, that does have an effect on the amount of DNA that you would be able to get out of it.
Right.
So that's one of the things that if we do validation, we really have to bear in mind that we're working with people who've had a vasectomy. That's the only information we get.
Okay.
The guy has a vasectomy or no V, and then he is intact. But even then, the person can vary in the amount of it's a fertility clinic, so they might be people having a problem with their fertility, so there might be a low DNA count. So that's one of the things that we have to bear in mind whenever we're doing work with it, that may vary.
Wow.
But that's important, and we needed to figure out where can dogs find it. And there you can see that there are certain areas where dogs are really very, very useful. One of them is clearly outside. Outside, if you want to use like a crime lights outside, that's a big problem.
Right.
Because you need you wait until it's dark.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Or whatever, and start using crime lights. That becomes really hard. So we've had dogs finding stuff on just on the grass, and then you have to take out the whole bit of grass and put it into a freezer, and then get it. And that's when we realize that people are not before that forensics never found anything outside on the grass, so they were unaware of how to process material like that.
Wow,
that's also a whole education process that comes along with it. We've had grass, twigs, leaves, lots of stuff like that. If there are areas that are very big and dirty, lights are also sometimes difficult to use, and then a dog can tell you, this is the spot that you need to look at. And even on textiles, if you can take inside into a dark environment, if it's dark background, or sometimes there are these kind of textiles that have these fluorescent qualities, that light up, or patterns, hopeless, you never know where to look. So all those cases, it's very useful to have a dog. The same with blood, it could get into little crevices, and the dogs can find it. And just looking at a light, you'd miss it. But if you do a presumptive test, then you can see, it's there. There's something there. So that's it's become, they're quite sensitive, the dogs. We've had several cases where you find something and it gets sent in, and then they have difficulty finding the DNA. But if they do a presumptive test immediately afterwards on the spot, you sometimes get a positive result. And it's difficult. Sometimes the presumptive tests are positive and they cannot find DNA. Other cases, the presumptive tests are negative, but then they do find DNA. So it's still an area where we're not entirely sure what we're doing yet, or how sensitive the dogs are. We want to match the sensitivity of the dogs to what the follow-up can do, because it's useless if they're too sensitive, you keep sending in material that there's no way they can get DNA out of it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Then it's not useful, right?
Right.
You want to get them so that what they find, they don't miss anything. Then what they do find, there's a big chance that they will be able to get the DNA out of that profile at the lab. That's that's the sweet spot that we're looking for. But I think one of the difficulties maybe is that if you're working with semen, that it's not really very homogeneous, same everywhere. So if you make one spot or if you make another spot, they're not exactly the same spots because one may contain more DNA than the other may. The volume may be the same, but the content may not be exactly the same. And that's partly why we're still looking. We're still busy with the research. We're still finding things out. Yeah. But it's nice because you get working. I think we've had about 4 or 5 students working on this project now with us, and they all do it for their masters. So it's quite nice. Master students working with us, and that's nice because they have nicely a couple of months of work, and every time we learn something. So that's really good. And we try to publish it as well. That's also part of what I think you should be doing as if you're doing research. If you don't publish it, you might as well not have done it, because if you don't share what you learn, then how are others going to build on top of that information?
Right.
You don't have to have people reinventing the wheel all of the time. It's good to publish.
You were an author on a study about, it was motivation. I think it was motivation for dogs detecting an odor. How unusual. But you used 3 dogs in the study, right?
The very recent one?
Yes.
Yes. That was a study. That's sort of my pet thing. That was a student who had done a lot of work. Actually, she was part of a conservation activity where they were trying to see if they could use dogs to help locate pygmy, not rhinos, but hippos. Pygmy hippos.
Interesting.
Pygmy hippos. Oh,
Pygmy hippos. That was the final objective was to see if you could use dogs to locate that. And they were also wondering, they could find scat, their droppings.
Yep.
And they wanted to see if they could train a dog to detect if the scat was from a female in oestrus or non-oestrus.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So she used horses as a model to investigate whether it was possible.
Okay.
So she had a vet collect manure from a horse from inside the horse, not when it was dropped.
Okay.
And do that pre-oestrus and after oestrus, in oestrus, so you have these different.
Mm-hmm. Is that to keep it like just to make sure that you're getting a pure sample?
Exactly.
So that it's not contaminated.
And it's always the same, just to be completely sure, get everything.
Right.
So you know exactly when you're getting it super fresh and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
And she had a couple of dogs that she was working with, and she done her work, and she was thinking about writing an article about it. And the person who was interested in the hippos said, "Well, I don't know enough about dog training to help you. Maybe you should find someone else to help you write the article." So she knew about me. She said, "Okay, I'd like to get in touch with her." So I was contacted. I said, "Okay, let me read what you have." And I read what she had, and I said, "Well, I don't think you have anything to prove that dogs can actually do this, but you have a lot of interesting data, because I can see, based on your data, that these dogs are learning something completely different. These 3 dogs are learning something different, each one of these, just based on the data." So I said, maybe you can write an article about it, but not the one that you were planning, but more looking at the differences between the individual learning strategies that these dogs are following. So that's what we did. So she looked at all of her data again, and we talked about it. I wanted to see, because she had she had taught the animals a yes and a no indication, which was interesting to me. So she just gave them something, and if it was a yes, they stayed, and if it was a no, she just shaped whatever they started doing. So there was a dog that really sat down nicely. So that was interesting to see. And and I helped her look at the data and analyze the data in different ways to sort of figure out what each of the individual animals were learning. And one of them was really interesting because there were sets of 10 that she was giving them. So there were 10 of the manure samples that the dogs knew, or it was 10 new manure samples. And there was one little dog who, within this session of 10, learned the new odor. So if you just looked at the results of the whole session, 10 of pre-estrus and 10 oestrus, if you looked at the results of that whole session, you would think that she immediately learned. But if you looked within the session, you could see there was a learning curve.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Interesting.
Another dog was different. He just started, whenever he got something new, he thought, I'm going to hit it. I'm going to hit everything. And his learning curve was more learning to not hit on stuff. So it's interesting. You can see that it's what you're teaching and what's being picked up. You need to look at it a little bit more different, more detail. And you have some dogs that were more like, okay, this is new, so it's probably not it. And other dogs that are more liberal and think, okay, this is something new. This may be it, And being liberal or being conservative as a dog has advantages and disadvantages. If you have a very liberal dog, he will generalize quite quickly, but he will also make false alarms.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you have a conservative dog, he is only going to sit if he's absolutely sure.
Yeah.
Right. You may miss stuff, but when he does sit, is there.
Right.
What you can use these dogs for is different. If you're an indication of a dog means that you're going to operate on a person, he better be damn right.
Yes.
Right.
But if a dog misses something and a plane can blow up in the air, you don't want to miss anything.
Right.
Nope. But on the other hand, you don't want to make too many false alarms because it's very expensive to go to check the whole airplane.
Yes.
But it's good to know what kind of dog you have. If it's a tendency for glass half full, glass half empty, how do you work with that? And how can you influence it? Can you influence it?
Or even, can it guide your training strategies for that dog, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because if you have a dog, if you ask for a behavior that an animal does very, very easily, then you're creating him maybe also to be a little bit more liberal.
Right.
Because it's just easy and you can try,
Right.
Oh, it doesn't give me a reinforcement. Okay, I'll go on to the next. No problem.
Yeah, it's like the type of indication that you might choose for that dog.
Exactly. If you take something that he does that's more difficult, that he has to invest more, then he's only going to start doing that if he's damn sure he's going to get his reinforcement.
Yeah. It's kind of like I do competitive detection, and we've got an indication that's very common in our world, which is a look back. Yeah. Like the dog finds the hide and then looks back at the handler, and it's so easy for the dog to do. I have a dog that actually does this, and she's one of those dogs that makes those rapid decisions. And it's been a training challenge for me for like 7 years with her. And it's exactly what you're talking about.
I would really choose a different indication.
Yeah, at this point, I'm kind of like, but yes, exactly. It's the downside of that indication. And when I even compare her to half sister.
This is my dog who thinks I've been on a Zoom call long enough.
Way too long. Time to go do things.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah.
She also thinks she's a cat.
The best guy. Yeah. Oh, she's adorable. Mm-hmm. What kind of dog? What kind of dog?
Cairn Terrier.
Oh my goodness. Oh, how cute. Oh, that's adorable. Absolutely.
Very stubborn little dog.
Opinionated.
Very, very, very. Yeah. She's just so fun.
No, all of what we're talking about, there's so many applications when you start extrapolating these discussions to how we train our dogs and how we teach our students and, teaching our dogs as individuals. This is also this conversation that we're having, that whole aspect of making sure that we utilize this type of thinking to think about our dogs as individuals and how they process information is so important because, it's so common to kind of, look for a recipe in training.
Yeah.
Right. And, when you standardize things to such an extent, you're going to end up with a lot of, from what I've seen, you end up with some really good stuff, but you end up with some mediocre results depending upon the dog if you follow the recipe.
Yes, but I think there are two. It depends what your central focus is. For example, there's mind detection dogs.
Right.
We know exactly what they need to be doing.
Yes.
We know exactly how they should get there, and it's a system of training them. And any dog that does not work following the system, you can't have them. It's like a factory approach. If you look at the way they're trained, they move from, especially at Norwegian's People Aid, they move from one trainer to the next trainer to the next trainer. Each one of them is specialized in this particular certain part of the training, and we're going to do that optimally. And then you move on to the next one, and you move on to the next one. So it's like a factory. It's like a factory approach. You go through one to the other. And the job needs to get done. You need to be done safely. You don't want people hurt. You don't want dogs hurt. So everything has to fit. So there you get really good product at the end. I hate the word, because it's a man or a woman and a dog working. It's a good team and they do their work absolutely well. And that is essential for both of them to be safe.
Right.
The other extreme is where you have someone who wants to do something fun with their dog.
Yep.
And that's where you put the person and their capabilities and incapabilities, and the dog with all of its personality and its capabilities and incapabilities. That's the center thing. And you just find out however you're going to get the message across to both the person and the dog. And there you're completely free. And I've learned a lot from that. I appreciate both sides, though. But I've seen that you can be extremely creative in training and get dogs to do the most incredible things. And sometimes you get completely bogged down. Okay, this is not going to work for this dog. I have to find another way.
Right.
But if the job needs to be done, and that is central, and it has to be done efficiently and effectively, and your whole training system is built on it, then you need a different approach. So I understand both things.
Yeah.
What has been one of your, or a couple of your most rewarding, internally rewarding, makes your heart sing projects that you have got to work on?
Oh, I get incredible. If I don't do anything that I cannot learn from. So whatever I do, there are these takeaway moments that I think, oh, wow, this is incredible. Well, I talked in the beginning, I said there's this fungus thing in the elm trees. That's one of the more recent ones. I haven't published, it's under review. The article is under review. So it will be out, hopefully, once the review process is done. But that's only one dog. But the incredible thing is that there I went to watch this dog being trained by a really old style handler, a whole old style instructor. And I watched him work and thought, oh, is this really going to work? But, I don't know. Let's see. I could see that there was a lot of potential there. Let me phrase it like this. There was a lot of potential there for the dog to be picking up completely different cues. Mm-hmm. A lot of potential. But I also saw he had a couple of tricks up his sleeve. I thought, oh, maybe. So I did he was willing to, he had to participate with me because I was doing kind of the validation. And so I put lineups out for this guy and this dog. And the dog had never worked lineups. Not in this way, and it was a very active indication, as we can say. So the little jars in the lineup, they were stainless steel, these cocoa shaker kinds.
Yes,
they were all over the place. But what I saw was, okay, he is really responding to the odor and not getting distracted by the other odorants. So that was a good thing. And that was with material he'd never been trained on before, completely. So I said, okay, now we're going to do something different. So I went, what he was basically being trained on was little bits of wood that had been collected from around the spot where the fungus had eaten into the tree. So I had those from new trees and from control trees that were not sick. I had a batch of those, and I rigged a couple of trees outside on the road beside my house. I live in a very tiny village, and there were all of these trees standing there, not elms, just other trees. And I put 5 minute pieces, like a millimeter or 2 pieces around the bark of each of the trees along the line. So either trees with 5 pieces of fungus, wood that had been attacked by this fungus, or wood that had been not attacked by the fungus. And I did that on a Thursday afternoon, and it was in the winter, and it froze that night, and there was snow on the ground the next morning when they came. And I thought, it's been there for a while. And I'd been walking around each one of these trees, putting with a little pincette, putting these tiny fragments of bark into the bark of the trees that were there. But the next morning it was so cold. I thought, oh, I don't know, this might not work at all. So they came, and I gave them a cup of coffee, and I said, because they'd been driving for quite a distance, I said, it's pretty cold. Yeah, I said, well, we're here now. Let's try it. And it was incredible, and I was there. Wow, not a single false alarm, and it was like 20 trees. A couple of them were with the fungal thing in, and the others weren't. He didn't miss a single. He found everything, and he had no way of judging, which one was there. There was actually a distraction happening too, because it was just outside of my house, and my little dog is okay if I drive away or if I go away on a bike, but if I'm walking by myself out there, absolutely no way. She doesn't want to be there with me. So she's like a little Houdini. She managed to climb over the fence, and she came running up. So there was distraction there as well.
Right.
Didn't phase the dog. And then we went to Amsterdam, and we did a validation there. There were big trees, and the dog indicated on some. We couldn't tell, looking outside of those trees. Is this a sick tree? No idea. So then the validation was done afterwards. So where the dog did like 6 in The Hague, the dog did like 63 trees in half an hour and indicated a whole bunch of them. To actually validate that, they have to do a certain kind of measurement around the tree. And just setting up the measurement and collecting the data takes an hour.
Wow.
And I said, you have to investigate all of the trees that she indicated on, but you also have to investigate a number of controls, a number of trees that she sniffed and she ignored.
Right.
And she's just been wonderful. And that's a nice thing. This one dog could do it, and could do it quite easily.
Yeah.
And that was for me, whoa, maybe these natural odorants are much more interesting for a dog and easier to learn, maybe too.
Right.
I don't have enough experience in this field yet, but it's something that is really really mind blowing.
That's fascinating. That is fascinating, because that has a lot of
applications, because we've got I know, Stacy, you guys have your fly.
Oh, we have the
Lanternfly.
spotted lanternfly out here where I live. They're horrible, and there's a whole citizen science thing going on with trying to train actually the sport detection dogs to identify spotted lanternfly. And I mean, I kind of experimented with it very early on, and my dog was picking up on it very, very easily.
Yeah.
So it is really interesting, because that is something that's very natural. I didn't continue with it only because it's like they swarm my house. So, but it is fascinating, because that is kind of more of a natural substance. And, we're always hearing about, some complexities with things like explosives and everything. And it does make you wonder, to your point, if it's like a potentially a naturally occurring substance versus,
right.
Yeah, but I think the important thing is that you need to validate studies properly. And that's where it often goes wrong, because I think one of the bed bugs, for example, another insect, the way that they're trained and the way that the certifications take place are always with planted bugs somewhere. You know? So they're brought in from outside, planted into an environment where they're not naturally occurring, so they stick out. If you have an anomaly detection dog will also find bed bugs in a case like that. You know, this just doesn't fit in here.
Their whole diversion, why we have
Right.
And
Crystal, that's why we have 60s.
But if you have a natural infection, that means it's come on slowly. And it's there. There's no oddity cue anymore, because the whole room may be smelling a bit around it, like as well. And I think there was one study done where the dogs that had been done fine in certifications were then taken into rooms where they knew there were natural infestations, because they put like these little trays underneath the bed, and they had collected them in the tray, so they knew there were bugs there. But then still the dog could find them. And the dog that did very well in the certification did not really prove his worth in this natural environment.
Wow.
And so the validation of these things is very difficult, because you need an alternative method that will tell you what the reality really is, either prior or after the dog has searched. Preferably prior, but that doesn't change the odor. If you plant things, you're bringing things in from the outside, and then you're creating a disturbance that dogs can easily pay attention to, learn to pay attention to, if that is something that you always do in training. So you need to be able, and that's the same thing is true for explosives and narcotics. You need to be able to leave stuff out there for at least a week before you come back and search with the dog, so the oddity cue goes away.
There's also, I would say, implications for HR detection.
Human remains.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. I mean, I think about, we're asking dogs to go out and do old cold cases.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to set up training where it's not, you can't leave human remains out there for a really long time to actually do training. And then you start getting lots of anomaly detection dogs, because, you throw out, everybody's walked there, you've got it's the same old stuff. And then you want to turn around and have your dog go find someone who was murdered 40 years ago, and nobody's walked through that place in 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually quite a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Reliably.
Yeah.
So,
well, what good thing is that if you do have an anomaly detector dog, and if they smell the earth well, and if there's just one body lying there, and you're getting them to sample the ground, what they will do is they will get an idea of this is the background odor that's here. And then if something is in there that smells different, you will see a change in behavior, because they will, if the sniffing is always the same, and then all of a sudden they come across something that does smell differently, even if it's not completely exactly the training odor that their training odor, you will see a change in reaction. And it's, I think some of the people working with human remains dogs are very good readers of their dog, and they can see this change. There's something there, and then you prod and allow more air to come out and see what happens then. So there is dogs are very good anomaly detectors, and you can use that in areas, especially if no one has been walking around. You can use that. I think it's partly why they respond to landmines as well, because those are also areas that no one has been walking on for obvious reasons. And then they will, but they will react. There's something else under the ground. But the problem is if you do bury your hides, for example, and you leave them in the ground for a while, but the soil isn't healed. So you will have
Mhm.
them responding to the soil that has been broken and carefully placed back, but it will be some kind of disturbance. The landmines, for example, the training fields in the landmines have to be left at least 4 months, and preferably a rainy season, to heal before they're searched.
Yeah. Because
The mines are in there for 4 months.
Right.
I'm kind of thinking in terms of as the dog continues to work. So let's say the dog's starting to indicate on kind of more of an anomaly, but the more and more the dog is trained, right? Where let's say like a mine detection dog and they're trained in like, oh, here's an anomaly. This mine doesn't belong in the ground. But the more they work, the more they train. I guess my brain's kind of going to well, now it's no longer an anomaly because now they're finding these, so therefore mines belong in the ground.
No, but they are reinforced.
Okay, because I'm just kind of like thinking, are there long-term implications?
Yeah, no, because you do need to reinforce them. I mean, if you stop reinforcing that kind of behavior altogether, it will die out.
True. My brain was just hurting there for a minute.
Okay, so then, here we have this whole, your dog's doing mine detection. They go out, they alert, found a mine. Does the dog sit there and wait?
No, he gets called back.
So he gets called back.
And gets a Kong.
Oh, and gets a Kong. Okay.
Yeah, gets a Kong.
And
in training, however, they're supposed to stay there, sit focused, and then the handler will come up and will throw the Kong.
Okay.
Exactly at the spot that they're watching. So that's this phase really lasts a long time, and it continues during the maintenance training. So they're completely brainwashed in that way.
Gotcha.
But then they're also taught to come back and get the Kong. That's the other way there.
Right. Okay.
My brain is hurting over this whole thing, so I'm like, ugh. More coffee. I would like my second cup right now because
I think
trying to focus.
One of the things that you can do with human remains, for example, so if you are digging things down, then you're creating a ground disturbance. But what you could also try to do is to mimic odor coming out from the ground, is that you have this decomp fluid, and you put that on the ground. So you don't need to break the ground up, but you're just soaking the ground itself with this decomp fluid as one of the training exercises that you could use. If you do that, you have to be very careful that you also create, or preferably before you start doing that, that you just have wet patches here and there, so that the dog doesn't start to respond to wet patches, because you really want to not have him do that. But that way you could see if there's a difference in the way that they respond to the decomposition odor. And as one of the training exercises, I think it could be a very valuable one.
It's so interesting just thinking about, like, sometimes we think we're training our dogs to do something, and what they're actually learning is completely different.
Yeah, that's why that one study was really fascinating for me. And I was like, that's not what the dogs are learning. And
I think that's what triggers me as well. It's always, trying to find out what is the dog really learning. That's sort of it's like a little crime scene investigation all by itself.
Yes,
it's a puzzle. What have you learned?
Right, it's like our human brain jumps to a conclusion because this is the way we logic. Right, this is our logic, but dog logic is not necessarily the same.
No, but it's fun, I've had this I've just completed a seminar here with a couple of students, and one said, "Oh no, my dog's been told, hey, he looks for vanilla." I said, "How do you know?" "Well, I use this vanilla sugar, and maybe he finds that." I said, "Okay, great, but do you know what it is that he's finding? Because vanillin is the chemical that you really need." He wouldn't be able to find, if you've trained on the vanilla sugar, which has this chemical added to the sugar, I don't think he would find a original vanilla piece. She said, "Oh yes, but he finds that too." I said, "How do you know?" "Well," said, "because I've been training him on this vanilla sugar for a while, and then my instructor, I was also taking him to this detection class, and I found out after a couple of times that my instructor was really using the vanilla stick." I said, "Okay, but I don't think it's the same odor then that he's responding to. I think they're two different odors." Oh, no. My dog has learned vanilla. My dog has learned vanilla. So that was fun. I said, okay, maybe we can try it. And because I have the vanillin myself, so we can set up an exercise and we can do it together, in the class. It was a safe environment. There weren't too many pupils, so we did that. So what we did is I made 4 different lineups, and we did in all different kinds of containers. And I took the kind of vanilla sugar that she'd been training on. I took vanillin. I took this little vanilla stick that you use when you're making natural vanilla. And there's a luxury kind of vanilla sugar that we call vanilla bourbon, that also has all of these black specks in it and is much more a complete version of vanilla than just the cheap chemical one. So we had these 4 different kinds, and I got all kinds of distractors, including something that we call pear sugar here, which is if you have these little pears that you cook, and it has a coloring added to it, so the pear becomes really nice and red. I also cook them in port to make them because they taste really good, but the color is also nice.
I'm getting hungry.
I know. Yeah. That sounds lovely.
An interesting thing is, so we had you had the dog Serge. He did perfect on the cheap vanilla sugar. Mm-hmm. The vanilla stick was in the first container of that batch, which he skipped, but she saw. And later on, she went back and she said, he missed that one and he needs to smell that too. And it was an immediate alert. So he was perfect on the cheap vanilla sugar. He was perfect on the vanilla stick. The vanillin powdered, so just the chemical without the sugar. He was standing there sniffing all around it, but moved on. Uh-huh. And he completely ignored the expensive vanilla sugar.
Wow.
The more complete bouquet.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. And quite clear, this dog has learned the cheap vanilla sugar and he's learned the vanilla stick. And why he, the very first time, she said, well, my instructor does have the tendency to, if the dog is doing right, she tells me immediately, so I reinforce. So probably the dog knew the game very first time, hey, there's something strange here. And the instructor said reinforce. So then it adds very quickly to the library of products.
Yep.
And then what I did is I made an exercise for them. So I had these little glass vials, and in a set there would be 3. And 2 of them were, for example, the vanilla sugar, the cheap vanilla sugar. And then the third would be the vanillin, or it would be another combination, 2 sticks, and it would be the bourbon vanilla sugar. And so I said, okay, so you have 3 vials, sets of 3. I think I had 4 sets of 3. For each of these 3, you smell the 3 and you tell which one is different. So you don't need to tell me what's what, but just smell these 3 things and tell me which one is different. And they were perfect. They were perfectly capable of discriminating between all these 4 variants. So you can see our senses of smell are pretty good. So why should the dogs will certainly be able to tell the difference? And why do we think he generalizes? Just because it says vanillin on the package?
Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So one of the questions we ask a lot of the scientists that we interview is, if you, how did you make the transition from academia to kind of your private thing, or are you still doing both?
Yeah, I'm still doing both.
Okay.
Because I think what I try to do is I try to keep one foot in with research and publishing, because I think whenever you're doing something, you might as well do it well and document everything properly, so you can make a publication so other people can learn. You can share. And on the other hand, I've been out of after I finished my my university study, I moved into computer science for a bit, because there were no research jobs. So I learned to I learned computers. I learned was first PCs, Lotus 1-2-3 kind of programs.
I remember that one.
It was mind blowing. Oh, this is so much.
Oh my goodness.
I worked for an American company for a long time, a couple of years, 5 years almost. One of the qualities that I was taken on for was my ability to explain this computer nerdy kind of thing to users. to people using it. And I think that's where I started to develop a quality. I'd also have a teaching degree, but I started to further hone the ability to try to make things simple and descriptive. And that's why I still enjoy going to all kinds of talks and all kinds of lectures with other people too, because sometimes you get somebody to explain something in a way of, oh wow, this is a perfect way to explain it. Now I can steal that idea and I can take it with me and I can use it forever and ever and ever. And I do that unashamedly, because I think both in the research you build on what other people have done, and in the teaching you also build on what other people have done.
Absolutely.
So if you had the research grant fairy come and give you money, what project would you do?
One of the things that would make everybody's life so much easier is if you were able to predict based on some well thought through cognitive tests early on in life, and not just cognitive tests, but also motivational tests and stuff like that. If a dog would really turn out to be a good dog, good detection dog, good tracking dog, So really a long-term study where you try to. I did a work with NPA where we had we did this. There was something called neurological stimulation, early neurological stimulation, where you were sort of adding all of this kind of funny things that you were doing to little puppies. You were putting them on an ice cold mat, and you were prodding their feet.
I do this with my puppies.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it's something. It doesn't work. It doesn't add anything. It doesn't harm. It doesn't harm anything. But if you have a rich environment, a rich socialization environment, it doesn't add anything. At least what we found. But it was an intense socialization program, because part of the socialization, you're doing so much stuff with them, and you're also getting all of these scents to them. So that doesn't really add anything, but it would be able. It is interesting to find something, because sometimes you have a male and a female, and they have a litter, and one litter turns out great, and then you rebreed, and then the second litter is just hopeless. Nothing comes out. And may very well be something that has to do with the mother during pregnancy, because there are a lot of effects that that come into play then. Yeah. But if you do have them, and they're say about half a year old, and they've gone through early socialization and they're towards puberty, but not at puberty yet, but in between there, would there be some kind of testing that you could do that could predict the kind of personality that your dog would develop, so you would be able to put him in the right kind of career, right? Make an early career choice for dogs. I think if we were capable of doing that, that would save everybody a whole lot of grief.
Yes, agreed.
Like aptitude testing for puppies.
Yes.
Yeah, but they haven't turned out to be very predictive yet, have they?
No.
So, I'm sure that with all of these new things that we're developing, we must be able to get it done a little bit, but it's going to be breed specific, because I think breeds develop at such different rates and they develop such different behaviors. So it's I need a really big grant fairy for that one.
Yes, exactly.
A massive one.
We can always hope, right? The lottery. Somebody will win the lottery, right?
Yeah.
And then we can hope that they focus on Labradors. Just saying. Yeah, exactly. Or maybe, we'll let the Malinois people play. Maybe. No, maybe.
Okay, Adee, what are some of the things you want people listening to the podcast to really take away from our discussion, or just in general that we didn't maybe cover?
I think we did cover it. I think one thing is to enjoy training. and not have, these expectations, but just enjoy. That's, I think, very important. Otherwise, you're going to get into these negative cycles about things not working out exactly as you intended. That's no good. So enjoy. But I think the thing to enjoy most is to, just to figure out what it is that your dog is actually doing. I think if you have that curiosity, that openness, it means that you are, you're open to people watching you and saying, I'm seeing this is happening, I'm seeing that is happening. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? And to think. The only way we can teach dogs is by setting up the next exercise in such a way that he will learn what you put into it. So you have to think about your training, because it's only as good as you're capable of setting up your next exercise. That's the way that you move ahead into their brain. So you have to evaluate what you see. You have to ask other people's opinion. You have to be open. They're not hurting. They're not criticizing you. They're helping you build your dog. And think of what you're going to do next, and then be very precise in what the goal is of your next exercise, and set it up in such a way that it's clear for the dog what he needs to do. There are no alternatives, and that he actually learns what you want him to be learning. He takes away the right answer. So I think dog training is I think almost 90% thinking and preparing, and 10% working with your dog.
Wow. I think we're going to end on that. Yeah. And if you want to get into Adee's brain about that, make sure you check out her book.
Right. Well, put a link
in the show notes.
Yep.
And thank you, Adee, for the time today. We greatly appreciate it and hope you will come back soon.
Okay. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Excellent.
And thank you for asking all of these questions. It's always good to have lots of questions asked, so that your mind starts to work again.
Excellent.
Especially on a Monday.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, mine's kind of blown for the day. So
exactly. All right, everybody. Thank you, all our listeners, and go train.
Canine Detection Collaborative.
We appreciate the time you spend with us. If you liked this episode, not only should you follow us so you don't miss the next one, but please also rate and review us in your favorite podcast app. For info on collaborating with us, go to k9detectioncollaborative.com. That's K9detectioncollaborative.com, where you can find our socials and pick up our latest monthly freebie. Join us again to talk training in the next episode.